Hi everybody, here we are again back in the Woodworking Wisdom Workshops. My name's Colwin and today we're going to be looking at long hole boring and making a nice two-part table lamp. Really nice chance to shape, play with a bit of faceplate turning and some spindle tools as well. So you know my favourites, the skew chisel and things like that are all going to come out today. Nice voluptuous shape, so we got some chances to put some lovely curves in. A nice little project this one, lots and lots of things to do, some little techniques to pick up as well. So we're going to crack straight into this one because there's a fair bit to do. Like I said, it's two parts. We've got a tenon to make as well as a mortise, and obviously we're going to bore all the way through the centre, and then we will put a little hole in the side also to take the flex as it comes through. It's going to be held on a little recess as well, so we've got like I say, a lot of chances to look at holding on the lathe. And the timber we're using is a softwood, but it's a bench top grade of joinery pine. So it's known as redwood, not the giant sequoia redwood. This is a white redwood, and really nice to turn. You get that real sort of Christmassy pine smell from it. Two pieces. Okay, we've got a piece of timber for the base here, and I've already pre-drilled a hole for my screw chuck, and then we've got a nice long piece here for the spindle. I'm already loaded up with a 4-prong drive in this end, and at the tailstock end I've got a hollow live with a exhaust hole or series of holes around the side so it can throw out the shavings. We will talk about those more in a moment once we start turning. So I'm going to start from the bottom up. So we're going to start with the base, work our way through. So what I need to do is put a chuck on the lathe, the faceplate, the screw chuck as well. So we're going to need our trusty C-jaws and the SK114 chuck. That's going to go straight on. For the moment, I'm just going to move the tailstock back because we will need it in a minute. I'm going to put a hole up through the centre, and rather than turn that hole, I'm going to use a Forstner bit or a sawtooth type Forstner bit. I'll see what size I've got, see what hole we're going to do. But certainly the one I've got there at the moment is around about 30mm, which sort of works. So, faceplate or screw chuck, keep saying faceplate, screw chuck, which is going to fit into my C-jaws, purposely made to fit into the C-jaws. Now, you can keep the screw that much exposed if you want to. It's a bit too much for what I need, so I'm going to use a little packing piece there, look, and that's just going to go straight on, and then we can screw our piece of timber through all the way up. And all I'm going to do is just tickle the outside edge, not do too much to the outside edge, not shape it or anything, just make sure it's nice and clean. And also create a hole point here for my chuck. And again, I'm going to use C-jaws here, so I'll measure those and we'll get a recess for the C-jaws. Nice big long tool rest just below centre. If you're unsure where centre is, spin the piece of timber, hold a pencil on, and it'll give centre up for you. There we are, that will do us. And before we start, lay speed down to 0 and then creep the speed up gently. There we are. We're going to start with a bowl gouge, and my choice is to start with a 3/8 gouge first, so 10mm. It's a nice strong tool to use. We wouldn't use a roughing gouge on this. This is not a piece of spindle turning. Remember, roughing gouges' full names are spindle roughing gouges. Their intention is to be used for between centre work only, not this. This type of faceplate turning has a different orientation where the grain's running this way. You've got two areas of end grain potentially hitting that roughing gouge. That would be bad news, so we mustn't do that. So spindle roughing gouges are for spindle work only. Okay, bowl gouges for bowl work. Just gonna drag cut or pull cut until we get a nice clean surface. If you're wondering what the speed is, we're looking at 800 revs there. But, you know, anything up to about 1200, as long as it was balanced, is fine. And we're just getting to a nice even surface. At this stage, I'm not overly worried whether it's dead flat because we want it to sit on the table without it rocking around. The minute we put a recess in, of course, that will happen because you've got a hollow in the centre, so that will be fine. But now what I want to do is just start thinking about sizing my C-jaws. Okay, let's get my rule. And we're just going to create a mark. There we are. I think the camera can just pick that up. And then we'll go straight to a parting tool. Parting tool cut to the inside of that line that I've just made. Back to the bowl gouge. You're going to take your time with this, of course. I'm just doing this to fill the around about 40 minutes to 45 minutes. Because I've done this so many times, I can go from one section to another. But if you've never done this before, just give yourself some thinking time. There's no need to rush. It should be an enjoyable process, so don't rush these. And I'm just dragging now to the centre. Look where my handle is. That's quite important. I'm over the other side of the lathe now. I want to drag away from what will be a fairly fragile edge. And an important edge as well. So that's taken the bulk away. I'm now going to use the bevel rubbing. There we are. And then we're going to go to the trusty skew to create a dovetail. And I'm going to go to a square skew because I want a nice square edge. Use the tip of the tool. First of all to clean the waste, now to create the dovetail. So using the angle, the natural angle of the skew. There we go. And now let's look at finishing nicely the main surface. I'm going to go to the signature skew, so the Colwin signature skew for this one, because it's nice and wide at 30mm, and it's a nice scrape. You can come straight off a bowl gouge if you want to, but this is going to just help me iron out any lumps and bumps. And because it's on side grain, it's going to give me a really good finish. Let's just have a quick look and see where we are with that. And a couple of little marks here. We're going to carry on scraping first for a little bit. There we are. That should be enough. I'll put the skew there because we're going to use them quite a lot today. There we are. Lovely, lovely clean finish. Nothing to worry about there at all. So we're going to do a little bit of sanding. So dust extraction's going on. And I'm going to start at 100 grit. We're going to work our way through only to 400. So I have prepared a 600 grit here, but we're not going to need that. It's a little bit too much for what we've got here. And also, this is a really, really quick sand. These softwoods don't take much to sand up. They're exactly like their name suggests, they are relatively soft. Some issues you can get with them though, if they're really... Some can be quite resinous, so they might clog your paper up quickly, so just bear that in mind. For that reason, I do prefer the material back to abrasives, because you can wash them out or shake them out. They're very flexible, so you can sort of do this, flick them around, and get out some of that, that clogged up. But you can see how easy that's working away. And already I can get down to a 240 grit. There we are, now 400, that's my last one. You could use a bowl sander on this, of course, there's enough flat areas for you to do that. There we are. And as I've told you so many times, my background, my training has been in production turning. So if you're looking at doing a batch of these, do all the bases first, then you can change the screw chuck out after you've finished them all. And again, if you're going to put a finish on here, now's the time. So sanding, sealer and a wax polish I probably would suggest. I'm going to leave it naked just for the moment. Can always be refinished afterwards anyway. So there we are. Now I can expand my C-jaws into that recess. And nice and quick. So what I like about having a chucking system, that you can use the screw chuck, the faceplate on, because I've not had to change the chuck at all. Literally comes straight off the screw chuck, and then expanded the C-jaws into the recess I've made with them on there. So, you know, it's a really quick way of working. I'm gonna just clean up that outside face, turning the lathe speed down again before I start the machine. I've checked to make sure nothing's touching the tool rest. And now all I'm going to do is just drop the handle of my bowl gouge down nice and low. Same size, the 3/8. And I'm going to cut away from that base. So if there's any breakout, it's on this side here, the side that doesn't need, or that will be taken away. So nice and low with the handle. We're just going to skim. And your initial cuts might be a little bit aggressive. The bowl blank might be trying to push you away a little bit. Just keep persevering. There we are. Now we're getting to solid round. So everything calms down a little bit. We'll stop and have a quick check, see if we're completely round. All of the bandsaw marks have gone, yep. So what I'm going to do now, drop the handle further and create a nice cleaning cut. There we are, that's done. So my next job, I want to just change position of tool rest. You can see the breakout that I've got here, okay? Now that's fine. This is the area that's going to be taken away. It's going to be shaped. The back edge is absolutely crisp and perfect, so we're happy there. It's just working in the right direction for the project and the timber. I'll just skim that surface just very briefly, just with the same gouge. Just give them a little bit of a tickle. And to be honest, that's all. I don't need to do any more. I just want to make sure that the surface is true. Doesn't have to be clean, just needs to be true. So not undulating at all. And now we're going to go with a drill chuck. And I'm going to go and grab my 30mm-ish Forstner bit. Remember, we've had a conversation before about Forstner bits and sawtooth bits. Sawtooth bits literally have a sawtooth on the end, designed for end grain. True Forstner bits have a cutting edge designed for side grain, so they leave nice crisp finishes. You can use one for each other, but the difference, or what you have, use a sawtooth for side grain. It leaves a fairly ragged cut, or ragged entry point. If you use a Forstner bit for end grain, then it just takes a long time to cut. It doesn't chisel the grain out as efficiently, so you do get a little bit of heating up, and sometimes you can get a little bit of burning as well. So that's the only reason that we use the right thing for the right job. Lathe speed down to 0, start the machine. I'm going to be cutting this at around about 900 to 1000 revs. And I'm not going to go too deep, probably in about an inch. And this is the reason that I use the screw chuck instead of a faceplate. There we are. So we got a nice clean hole there. So yeah, this is why we use the screw chuck. You imagine using a faceplate now. As I start shaping this, I've potentially got holes from the screws that's going to be part of the base. If I've used a screw chuck, it's right in the middle. So we're losing that hole. No signs of holding afterwards. So that would be the reason. Now I can start shaping. I'm going to put what we call a landing just to the outside of the hole, and that's just a flat area where the shoulder of the upright contacts. And that's to create that landing. I want to have it slightly dished inward, so there's no likelihood to see a gap between the upright and the base. It creates a nice crisp area. Just going to put a little bit of a V cut in now as well. So I've got a defined line as to where that landing will end. And now we can start shaping. So a little OG, I think. Lay speed can come up a wee bit now. So we're up there at 1200. And I'm just going to start cutting the side grain first. And now we've got rid of the bolt, we can start thinking really about shape. So let's have a little bead. I'm going to copy pretty much the one that I've already done. So there was a little bead in that one. So I'm going to leave a spot for a bead. And then we finished up on a little V cut as well. We are. So we're almost there. We can start thinking about refining some of these shapes now. So let's just take the diameter of that bead down a little bit. There we go. The tailstock's getting in my way a little bit, so I'm just going to remove him for this part of the process. And skew chisel, let's go for a smaller skew. I'm going to start shaping the bead, but we're not going to roll the bead, we're going to scrape it round. You know, this is not side grain that we're working with here. It'll roll quite nicely with a scrape. There we are. Now I'm going to go to a smaller gouge, only because I want to get fairly close to this corner here. So if I go to the little 1/4 inch, I can get in nice and close, bevels rubbing, bring that curve around. I'm going to stop there because I want to do another little bead there. So again, use the flat of the skew. Just controlling that skew. I'm using this thumb as a bit of a brake, really. Just controlling it as we come around, soften those edges. We'll stop, we'll check. What I'm looking for is signs of tearing. We haven't got any, so we can sand this quite rapidly now. You saw how quickly we sand the back. Okay, so that's it. I'm not going to do anything more than that. So back with that same abrasive and the dust extractor. Always keep your dust extractor nice and close. And if you find that this the speed is creating clouds of dust, turn the speed down. So 100 grit just to do all the really coarse work. Paper's just clogging up a little bit, so every now and again it'd be worth just giving it a bit of a flick out. double check. You know, oh, you've seen me sand before, you've seen me do this project before. It's worth just stopping when you've used a 100 grit for a little while, just to make sure that all those tears have gone. When they have, then you can go to your 150. And then the 240 and 400. There we are, 400. Nice, really nice timber. Of course, softwood takes a stain really well, and you can stain this either in timber colours. So if you wanted to turn it into like a walnut colour or an oak colour, you could do. Or you can go very contemporary and go bolder primary colours if you wanted to. So you can really mess around with softwoods. They take a stain really, really well, really nicely. At that point, you could sanding seal and put a bit of wax on there, and you get a lovely gloss finish. Incidentally, the one that I showed you before, that has already had a coat of wax, or sanding sealer and wax, and you can see that sort of satin sheen that you get from that sort of finish. It's quite a nice finish to use, quite an easy finish to use as well. But there we are, there's our base so far, so we need now to do the main upright, of course. What I would refer to really as the easy part of the build. But it's a lovely grain in this stuff. The other thing, if you wanted to burn this, again, you can get some lovely effects through burning and restaining as well. So it sort of lends itself to so much, does this softwood. Okay, so we can take the chuck out for the minute. I think we can take the chuck out for the rest of the demonstration, actually. I don't think we need that anymore. Pop that to one side. We're going to replace it with a 4-prong drive. And before I actually put that in the lathe, we're going to grab our bit of timber, centre that up. So I'm going to centre it up with a parting tool. I forgot to mention, of course, we've got Craig on cameras, who's doing a grand job of keeping up with what we're doing here. Alright, this is not a perfectly square piece of timber, as you can see from there. So a marking gauge is great, because it'll scribe the accurate representation of this on the inside. So you've got a nice little square box. You can just make that out there on camera. And I can now use my bradawl, which is in my back pocket. I can use the bradawl to find the centre of that hole far easier than trying to guess where the centre is on a square of that size. So the reason that I've done this now and haven't put the centre in is because I want to now just knock the centre in. So this is a 4-prong drive. It's one that you'll be used to. You know I use pro drives quite a lot, but 4-prong drives, they're the traditional, they're the ones that you get with most lathes. So that's what I'm going to show you. Plus, in a moment when we start hollowing this out, we're going to use this centre. Now this is a pro drive, and this is going to go up the part bored out side of the spindle, and so this is a little centering device, and it's on a 4-prong drive, so I want it to match what we've already got there, you see. So that was my other reasoning behind this. In the tailstock, we've got this nice revolving hollow tailstock center. And what this does is, in a minute, again, once we've centered, is the shavings will come out the side of the center itself. Again, we'll show you as we start. We need the tailstock up. Now, Okay, and we can start using this. There is a little centering pin. I haven't showed you the centering pin yet. We will look at this in a minute. A little bit more detail in a moment. So just line up my prong marks. Bring that center up. That center point. And I'm going to wind the center in until I get resistance. Once I get resistance on the tailstock, then I give it another half a turn. That's my general go-to. Got a lovely long tool rest here. This robust tool rest is really long. Still not quite long enough for the whole length, but it does the majority of it. And we're going to go straight to rough and gouge. I'm going to roughly rough down, if that makes sense, because once I've done that, I can then go to the auger and we're going to drill it through the middle. I want to do that first before I do any shaping, because I want to base the shape around the hole. Just in case we get a little bit of error in that hole, I want to make sure it's always going to be in the center. I'll show you what I mean. So let's just turn the lathe speed to 0, turn the machine on, and then turn it back up. Just going to stop the machine. We've got a few bits flying off already, so rather than run the risk of them hitting me, let's get rid of them by hand first. All the rest is good. And I want to be turning this at about 1600 revs. But if you're uncomfortable with that, turn it down. Don't go quite as fast. There we are. Tool on the tool rest and skim. Just a nice back and forward movement. I'm keeping the handle in line with the cutting edge. Then I'm going to stop the machine. We're not quite there yet, but we're close. Look. Stop the machine, bring the tool rest over, check to make sure it's not touching anything, double check the security on the tailstock, and start again. Speed is fine. We know that it's actually working well. It's not causing me any problems, so I don't have to turn the lathe speed down this time. There we are. That's a rough down spindle. We can now start thinking about doing some hollowing. So all I need to do for this is unwind. We're going to take the tailstock center out. I'm just going to show camera. We can just go ahead overhead. Thank you, Craig. So there's our little hollow. Okay, you can see the holes running through. We have this little centering pin here that just needs to be removed, otherwise we're not going to be able to hollow through it. Because what I need to do is use, where are we, this big guy here. And this is going to hollow all the way through our lamp. Okay, and adjust. All right, there we go. So what I'll do is take out that little center. There we are. Center's out. Pop that back in the tailstock. And recenter. Already now, look, we've created a little circle. That circle can be relocated on the tailstock. And so now that tailstock center is holding on its ring. There we are. Right. So I think we're about to start boring up through the center of this one. So long hole boring. Here's the actual auger itself. It's adjustable. You've got a little cam action here. So we're just going to wind that up and down to where we need it. Where do I need it? I'm going to look at the end of my tailstock. I'm going to make it so the auger actually just goes just past halfway of that length there. Lock it up, because we're going to come in from both sides, of course. Now I just need to adjust my lathe. I should have checked this before, because I need to now come all the way through. And this is one thing to think about. When you're positioning your lathe, we can put the headstock fairly close to a wall. The tailstock you're going to need to access, because best case scenario on bigger pieces you want to be turning this side of the bed, but when you're all using your auger, you need a lot of room, a lot of movement back here, you see. So we can keep that the tool rest there if you want to. You can move it out the way. What I tend to do is bore around about 1200 revs. You think about the size of that drill bit there. Excuse me, about 1200 revs. And we keep clearing the swarf. If you're getting a lot of screeching, then a little bit of wax, a little bit of normal wood wax on there would be absolutely fine. Okay. So there we go. Lathe speed to 0. Turn the machine on. Okay, so the idea is that we start boring straight away. So I'm going all the way through the hollow live center. Look how the chips are ejecting all the shavings as I pull that back. The chips are coming out. That's cutting nicely. We've already lengthened the auger, so I know how far to go, right up to the handle. That will take me just past the halfway point. A little bit of swarf in there. There we are. That's clearing really well. No screeching, which is good. Remember, if you have any screeching from the dry timber, then just a little bit of wax to lubricate the cut, and that'll be enough. And I'm putting no effort in there at all. That cutter's doing its job. It's all staying nice and central. There we are. So what I've done there, Craig, if we could come, that's it, brilliant. So what I've done there, look, I'm over halfway now. So if I turn that over, we'll meet that cut up. And what we have now is a hole in one side. So let's just show you a minute. So tap some of that waste out. You can see the hole. Okay, so that's past halfway. Now, to fill that hole, we're going to now use a drive that we spoke about earlier on. It's this one here. It's the COUNTERBORE. The COUNTERBORE fits nicely up through the hole that we've drilled, and it's a 4-prong drive as well, so that will do my driving. That frees me up now to bore in from the other end to meet the hole. So it's a really well thought out system. It works really, really well. And it self-centers itself. That's the other thing, of course. And we're now, like I've said earlier on, we're driving around our center hole. And this is why we don't do too much shaping before this point. One thing I will need to do, I'm just going to put the centering pin in the tailstock. So that little pin, that's going to go in the tailstock, and I'm just going to recenter. So wind that in until I get the ring of the live making an indent. Then I can take that back away. We can take the centering pin out and use the ring that's just marked. Use that ring to relocate the tailstock center. So it's all really, like I say, it's all really well thought out, works really nicely, everything's central. And now all we got to do is meet that hole up. So same speed, haven't changed anything on the handle, all the way through the tailstock. Keep those shavings clear, keep withdrawing the cutter. If you get a little bit of sort of build up, what I'm doing, just wiggling that around until it's clear, and then give it another wiggle back and forward, just like a Catherine wheel here. You get those shavings flying out. It won't be long, we're going to be through. There we are, just gone through, so that just fell right into the opposing hole. What I'd like to do, if we can get it picked up on the camera in a minute, is actually show you all the way through that center point now. Let's take that off. Take it out, my COUNTERBORE. I'll just have to clear the the excess that's inside. Literally just poke up the auger, see if we can get rid of that. There's always a little bit in there. Now, if we can get that camera working on that. I'm not sure whether we will. It'd be a great shot if we can. Which one shall we go on to? Gotta get it just right. Can't quite see there, but believe me, that is a hole all the way through. I can see right the way through it, just to prove. And it's met up perfectly as well. There is no, there's no steps in there. It's completely clean all the way through. Look, I'm going to put, there we are. So nice and simple. Okay. That's going to be the flex that we'll use afterwards. So now we've done that, we've got our holes. They're going to be our center. We're going to keep the counterbore in there. You can keep this one in there if you want to. I'm going to change it out though, because what I want to do is clean up my ends. So I want a single pointed center. So we're going to take out the hollow live. I'm going to go back to a regular center. Pop that in there. Because now I can cut right the way up to that point. My tenon is going to be the end that we've got the counterbore on. Remember, we need to create the tenon because it's got to go in that mortise that we made. And we may as well cut that soon. I have forgotten to do the tenon before. Of course, that's that lamp ruined if you forget the tenon. It's got to fit into the base. So if you remember, there's our tenon. Okay, I'm going to measure off the drill bit to get my tenon diameter. And we're going to go straight into that. Make sure everything's nice and tight. Speed is fine. We know that the speed is fine. We've just been using it to bore. So I was able to go straight into that speed. I am now going to turn it up a little bit. I'm cutting at 1600 revs there. So I'm going to go with a beading and parting tool. A little 1/4 inch or 6mm beading and parting tool. I'm going to cut that tenon. And one more, I'm just having a glance down. I've got a 25mm tenon to do. There we are. And I'm going to check that before we go on. I want to just to double check to make sure that it's fitting nicely. If it's not, then I can take a little skim off. And then once we've done that, we know that we're safe. We can do the fun bit. There we are. That fits in there nicely. Okay. Where are we? There we are. That fits in there nicely. Got a good join already between the base and the actual upright. So that's going to be okay. With a little bit of glue on there, that's going to be a really snug fit. That doesn't always happen first time, by the way. If you need to take a little skim off, do. Don't take too heavy a cut initially. Obviously, we don't want it to be sloppy, loose. So just make sure that you take your time with that. I'm just going to create the shoulder. At the moment, the shoulder is a 90. I want to make sure it's very slightly undercut so we get a good clean join when we put the two together. So I'm just going to do that with a skew chisel. And you can use the skew either upright or you can use it as a scraper, whichever your preference is on this. It's not a biggie. No one's checking up on you or anything. There we are, so that's nice and clean. I can clean the whole surface up now. My preference is a skew chisel. It's going to give me the best finish, but if I'm going to use a skew chisel to clean the surface up, I'll need to raise the tool rest. Okay, we've got flats here. Don't know whether the camera can see that, but we've got the odd flat, and it's that needs to go, and we need a nice clean surface to start our shaping with as well. We want to get that clean surface, otherwise the high points of all our coves, beads, fillets and that sort of thing could be torn. So I'm just resting the bevel of the skew on the timber, so we need bevel contact. About a 45-degree presentation of the cutting edge. And just letting that chisel do its stuff. And what you'll need to be getting from skew chisels is planer shavings. Just slicing the timber away, making a nice clean finish. I'm only doing the bottom end at the moment because these are going to be the high spots. And we'll move the tool rest in a second to do the rest. Then we got a good clean canvas. There we are. Look at the difference in finish. It's much better compared to that of the roughing cut that we had before. So forward cut, you can go back as well, but always finish on the forward cut. A little bit of decrease in the size of the diameter there. Top's always going to be a little bit smaller than the base. There we are. And whilst I'm here, I'm just going to clean up this very end. I want to make a slight convex curve on there. So skew chisel being used as a V-cut really. But as I come around that top edge, I'm just bringing the handle round to create the convex curve. Right the way to the centre. And that gives us a nice clean finish. Right, let's start thinking about some sort of shape. So I'm going to have a fillet or a flat area here first. And in that fillet, or that V-cut, sorry, I'm going to roll a half bead. You can do that with any tool. I'm choosing to use a skew chisel, but you can use your spindle gouge if you wish. Then we're going to go with a nice deep V and do the same thing, but much bigger. And we're going to round over this corner. Again, we'll do a half bead here. Now we'll do a little cove. I'm going to go with a spindle gouge to do my cove, I think. Drop the tool rest just a wee bit. Get him down. Gouges tend to be low with your tool rest. Skews and beading and parting tools high. That'll do us. That'll be deep enough. So now we can start concentrating on the top of the the lamp. We're going to separate that. We'll do a little OG, and again, that means a deep V, high with the tool rest, of course. Round over. And take the diameter down on this piece here. This is going to be a half bead again. So we'll just take the diameter down. Right to the bottom of the V cut. And then using the spindle gouge here, I'm just going to create that another little cove. And then we'll go into a little OG. Remember, the design is yours. You create the shape you wish, that you like. There we are, that'll be fine. There's this little flat area there we need to get rid of. It's gone, okay. So now, dropping the tool rest, I'm going to create the last little feature, which will be a nice deep cove. Take some of the waste wood away. There we are, the thinnest area of the whole piece. I'll use the roughing gouge just to quickly take some of that waste wood out, and then we finish with the skew. Of course, if you want to just practice with the skew, you can take the whole lot away. There we are, now we can blend in. So again, back to the skew, tool rest high. And if you find you're getting a little bit of vibration, then you'll just need to support the piece. That means bringing your hand around. Now if you're going to do this, you need to make sure you have nothing on your sleeves and you get your fingers nowhere near the tool rest, because the tool rest is a pinch point and it will take your fingers if you're not careful. So all I'm doing is putting my thumb on top of the skew out of harm's way. It's support. My fingers are on the underside, so nowhere near the tool rest. I'm making sure that I have nothing here that's going to catch in the tool rest, any chuck, any center or anything like that. So we're nice and safe. You're not gripping hard, all you're doing is literally just supporting, touching. And what this tool is doing for you is ironing out any lumps and bumps. So let it stop cutting when it wants to. All that means is just going over a low spot. Going over a low spot, you'll be cutting off the highs. That's fine, I like that. Okay, and then just that little transition area, if it needs a bit of a tickle, get that spindle back in there. Let's pop some of our tools away. There's no need for me to sand. You know what you're doing when it comes to sanding. So all we would do now is sand, sanding seal, and a nice wax polish on that. You've seen the one that I've made before. You get nice satin finish. in terms of fitting these, what the next stage would be to do, we would go with a little lip and spur bit down through here, and then I just counterbore the tenon so you can actually get the flex back up through as you're gluing the two sections together. And then it'll come out the side of here rather than be suspended from the top or coming through the bottom of the piece. But there we are. Let's pop them together. We'll have a look at the whole design. Out of the counterbore. A little bit of persuasion. That goes in there nicely. So there we are. Let me just pop the... Let's pretend that it's all fitted together. We'll put in the brass nipple. So the little brass nipple, this is our thread. That gets tapped in. You can, of course, if you want to, this is an imperial thread in this one. If you wanted to use a tap, you can tap him in. I tend to use it as a friction fit. That thread is my gripper. And I tend to always go for the brass lamp holders, only because then you can use 3-core flex and it's earthed. That's my only reasoning behind it. I find they look better as well. In terms of cord and cord clamp, so I'm using here, this is a coloured flex. And again, with a lot of the lamps that I do, I find the coloured flex as opposed to white just a little bit more sympathetic. You can get some really cool braided flexes as well, some really retro flexes which look nice. The cord clamp is quite an essential part though, and a cord clamp, I don't know whether we can go overhead there, Craig. There's a cord clamp, and that basically fits into the side here. I drill and make sure this is tapped and inserted in there. What we have with it is a little screw in the side. So this is an Allen keyed screw, and that just grips onto the cord as it goes through. So what can't happen then, so that goes through, you grip on here, you can't accidentally pull that out the lamp holder and basically have a plug cord and electricity flowing through naked wires. So that's another safety feature, and certainly if you're in the UK and you're trying to sell your pieces, it's an essential part. It's a stipulation that you must have a cord clamp on your cord or flex. Okay, so there we are, guys. I hope you've enjoyed that one. They're quite nice projects because it really gives you a chance to experiment with shape. It's a nice two-parter as well, so you're creating tenon fit, so there's a lot of technique in there. So don't forget, if you like what we do here, just give us a thumbs up, share with as many people as you can, and subscribe to the channel. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.